I'm Julie Zenner along with Dennis Anderson, and here's what's coming up on Almanac North.
During a controversial all-night session, Wisconsin lawmakers have cut the incoming governor's powers. What does it mean for the future of Wisconsin state government?
The American Indian Community Housing Organization has a bold new vision for the former 4th Street Market in Duluth.
And we'll have another video letter home from Afghanistan.
These stories and the business news coming up on Almanac North. Hello and welcome to Almanac North. Thanks for watching. And Denny, it's been a few weeks since we've had a show. It's good to be back.
It's been pledge time here on PBS, so yeah, we've had a couple of weeks off, and it's always good to have the show resume.
That's right, and thank you to everyone who called in during the pledge drive. It was very successful, and we really appreciate that support from those of you who are out there watching. But moving on to tonight, politics is on tap to begin the show, so let's get started.
All right, thank you very much, Julie, and good evening again. Well, the midterm elections in Wisconsin state government resulted in Democrats winning in every statewide race, including the governor's seat. But even before Governor-elect Tawny takes office in January, his powers have been curtailed by the Republican-controlled legislature. Democrats are crying foul, while Republicans claim it is a needed rebalancing of the powers of state government. Joining us now with her analysis is Alisa von Hagel, an associate professor who teaches American government classes at UW Superior. Alisa, thank you so very much for being here tonight.
Thank you again so much for having me.
Absolutely. What's your view on what happened in this lame duck session? I mean, this is getting chatter even in the national media.
Oh, it's getting a lot of press in the national media, and I think it's reflective of what's going on in many states right now, actually, of these lame duck sessions being used to widely shift the balance of power, as was stated, to rebalance the power within in state institutions. And so it's certainly a concerning issue given the enormity of what's being done and the lack of any really precedence for Wisconsin.
In reality, does it work in the effort to rebalance power? Does that really work?
Well, I mean, whether or not it's a rebalancing of power is one question, I guess. I mean, the Republicans in this legislature are the ones that have given the former or the currently sitting governor bulk of these powers or responsibilities that they are now claiming that needs to be shifted to them. And so if they were concerned with, the rebalancing of the powers of the institutions in Madison, one would presume they would have addressed some of these issues before this session. So it is, hardly, I mean, it's just a grab for power is, I think, fairly obvious.
Yeah, if you look at the two parties right now, there are very distinct approaches, and they're very far apart in terms of how to govern. Is it really smart politics, though, to take advantage of the system when you can to make sure that your priorities stay in place before somebody else takes control?
Well, time will tell, of course, but I think, given the blowback that's come to the Republicans in Wisconsin for these actions and for, again, not necessarily insignificant measures or changes, but changes that, aren't necessarily the most, powerfully, impacting powers to take to the legislature. I mean, it seems like they're raising a lot of stink over all of this, or, there's a lot of concern over all of the changes that are going on right now in this session, and, the speed at which it occurred, the closed door sessions and all of that sort of thing. And for what they gain from it, it's unclear. And they've really, I think, raised a lot of concern about the norms of, how you go about, dealing with the changeover in terms of power.
So what are your students saying at UWS? Are they asking questions?
Well, it's almost finals week, so they're pretty laser focused on that. But there are students who I think who are just curious and interested and have heard things or seen things on Facebook as a new news source, and simply just are confused about what actually is happening, what can happen, what is supposed to happen, and what has usually been the case. And so I think it's more there are a lot of questions from students simply on, trying to explain or to understand the matter.
Mm-hmm. Do you think going forward, this is just going to be kind of status quo for whenever there's a shift of power in a legislature or in a governor's chair or in the White House, that now the genie's out of the box, so to speak, and this is just how it's going to be done?
Well, personally, I hope not. I mean, it's, there's many issues that come up in terms of governing and what's done, and has already been raised by the newly elected Attorney General and a number of people, that there's going to be lawsuits coming pretty soon after, if the governor does in fact sign this bill into law to enact these changes. So, the drawing out of the lawsuit, of the time, the money, the energy in federal court for some of the issues, in state courts for some other issues. I mean, it'll just be very time-consuming simply just to deal with the changes occurring in the lame duck session. So,
given what the temperament of politics seems to be today, are many of your students interested in becoming politicians?
I haven't found any yet.
Really?
I think that there's a lot of interest in change in government, in what's going on, and I think students seem to be more so focused on non-governmental organizations or working through that sector as opposed to going the political route.
Sure.
But
Interesting.
at least I'll have to make more inquiries on that one. No, I have not yet come across any yet. So, but I think your point is well taken, that it's simply it's a violation of the norms of just simply what is good practice, what are the good behaviors that we generally respect amongst one another, our peers, our colleagues, or whomever, to go about business, and it's being thrown out the window. And so I think it is one more thing to add to that big pile of other examples of the same that are turning people off of politics or dreaming of becoming politicians.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like you're predicting that folks in Wisconsin can expect quite a bit of gridlock in the next couple of years as everything is kind of sorted out and people take their positions? Yes,
absolutely. So whether it's on these issues or issues in the upcoming legislative session, I mean, we have Republican-controlled Assembly and Senate, and obviously the newly elected Democrat in the governor's seat. So there may be some gridlock there, some battles between the two, and again, whether or not it's continued litigation or battles over what's just occurred, it's anyone's guess. And
sure. Mm-hmm. Well, Alisa von Hagel from UWS, American Political Associate Professor, thank you very much for being here tonight.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yep.
Thank you.
Lieutenant Commander Roger Reinert sending you another video letter home from Afghanistan. Salam alaikum dost, which means God be with you, my friend, and Chaturasti, or how are you? So learning a little bit of the Afghan language while I'm here. And I thought in this video letter I'd talk a little bit about Afghanistan itself. So, like, what was I first struck with? Brown, the color brown. The Kabul Valley is at about 6,100 feet, gets very little precipitation, and is a very arid region. It's very dry, very brown. No greens and blues like we're used to at home. The other thing that I was really struck by, both seeing Kabul from the air, or the Central Valley, as well as driving through the streets of Kabul, was just the extreme poverty of most people. Just the vast majority of Afghans are very, very poor. But the Afghan people themselves are incredibly warm. I've had an opportunity in the job that I have here to interact with many Afghans, both professionally and informally, and will absolutely give you everything they have. There's a small shop owner nearby who enjoys having us for lunch on occasion, and will feed 9, 10, 12 people at a time on a very, very meager salary. So incredibly impressed. And the other thing that is just struck me so many times is that by and large the people just want the same things that we all want. A decent job, safety, education for their children, city services that work, the sorts of things that all of us want. So as we're getting into the holidays, I just want to say a happy Thanksgiving, though that's past, and a Merry Christmas because that's coming up. Miss my many friends, of course, miss my family, my wife incredibly, and just treasure all the more the things that we take for granted at home, especially the outdoors in which we can play and have fun. So wish you all the best, and I'll talk with you again soon.
Last summer, the American Indian Community Housing Organization purchased the 4th Street Market in Duluth Central Hillside. Since then, AICHO has been making plans for the market, which has been an important resource for the Hillside community. It will soon reopen as an Indigenous food market featuring regional food items, a deli, and coffee shop. Here to tell us more is LeAnn Littlewolf, AICHO's Economic Development Director. Bruce Savage is a representative on the Fond du Lac Tribal Council and owner of Spirit Lake Native Farms. And Tawny Smith-Savage is Bruce's wife and co-owner of the farms, which specializes in Indigenous food products. And thank you to all of you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
LeAnn, maybe you can start by just sharing a little bit from your perspective on the closing of the 4th Street Market and how that has impacted the neighborhood and why it's important for it to reopen.
Oh, okay. So yeah, the market closed 2 years ago, and since we've purchased that property, we've just heard from community members that it has been a huge loss, and we've heard that in the community as well. We purchased the building in July, and so then in October or November 3rd, we had an open house just to say we've purchased it and we have these ideas on what we're going to do with this property, and invite people in. And so we had over 250 people come to the open house, and we did surveys to get input about what did people want to see in that space. And we had 150 surveys come in, and it was really around healthy food, Indigenous food. The former 4th Street Market was really a community space where people would go on a daily basis, and they were getting their staples. That space did a lot of things that I don't think our community really realized. It was a drop-off for mail for people. It had money orders. It had all these other services.
Almost sounds like it was a community center as well as a store.
Yes, it is a much cherished spot in our community, and so we want to make sure that that has that same community space and that vibrancy. And so I know that we're talking about doing this Indigenous food market, which is really needed in our city, but also our region, and I think it will probably be the first one in our state.
Sure. And Tawny and Bruce, you have a farm, or you make some products, and some of your products are going to be sold at the stores. Is that right?
Correct.
Can you tell us about those?
Back in the year 2000, my wife and I and 4 kids, we purchased a farm on the western edge of the Fond du Lac Reservation. And we processed the wood-fired maple syrup and wild rice there. And we were fortunate enough to be able to receive a FSA farm startup loan, which was one of 2 of the first farm startup loans in Minnesota for maple sugar production. So since then, we've been working very diligently, along with our 4 children and extended families, to be able to work this property and make it useful for us to be able to make products.
And Tawny, this has got to be exciting for you folks.
Yeah, it is very exciting to always kind of see the collaboration and partnership that can come out of the community. One of the things that I like about partnering with AICHO and is being in their store and being able to see the other artisans, other people who put out their product, whether it's beadwork or it's a natural product. And it's usually something that is a passion of theirs, just like wild rice and doing the maple syruping every year seasonally. That's a passion of our families. That's something that takes a lot of hard work and effort, and it's very meaningful.
LeAnn, as you talk about the Indigenous foods market, is it something that would only have Indigenous foods, or do you see it expanded to a grocery similar to what it was before as a 4th Street market, where people could really get anything that they needed?
Yeah, the intention is to have it as a grocery store that has healthy, fresh food and staples as well, and then to have this Indigenous, that Indigenous deli where we feature our foods, and we have so much culinary expertise, and to be able to bring that to Duluth is going to be exciting. And then just to have that community space again where people can come and gather, and then we can do education and we can do food demonstrations. One thing I wanted to say is that we have some support through St. Louis County to do 10 pop-ups in the space, featuring different Indigenous chefs, different education once a month. And so we'll be doing that as we're doing the development work. The food market itself won't be open from 12 to 16 months. So we want to make sure that we're using that space in the meantime, inviting community in, and we'll be gathering input to make sure that that space is designed to meet the community's needs. And we've already started to hear some of the themes of what people are interested in, family friendly. You know, it's just exciting.
I've heard you mention the word community a few times.
Yeah.
And so it sounds to me like you really want to expand this. This is going to be more than a little neighborhood corner grocery store.
Right.
You want this to expand. Can you tell us about that a little bit?
Well, yeah, and I think the main thing is, like, this is exciting to have an Indigenous food market. Like I said, we don't have one in our region, we don't have one in the state, and so really to be able to showcase our native food producers and for them to have retail space. Tawny was talking about our Indigenous First art gallery and gift shop, which we opened last summer at AICHO at the Gamaji building. And in that small space, we have over 77 different Indigenous artists and entrepreneurs featured. And that space has really taken off. Like the revenue that has come in has just really surprised us. But the main thing is for food producers and entrepreneurs to have access to retail space is huge. And I think that people across the state will be watching how this develops, and I think across the nation people will be watching how this develops. And I think if you think about, we're on Indigenous land, and the importance of having Native businesses in this community, I cannot overemphasize that. This is huge for Duluth.
Bruce, in addition to wild rice and the maple syrup that you produce at your farm, what are some of the other types of Indigenous foods that you think may be represented at the market, and how does that help other Native entrepreneurs like yourselves?
Well, a lot of the products that I see when I go marketing is, you'll see our other communities that are the white corn growers, and they'll have their dehydrated corn products and roasted corn products that are non-perishable out of the Wisconsin and further east communities. Also out of the Southwest, I see a lot of the red corns and blue corn. Those are non-perishable items, so they keep a while. And then, you know, just to the north and west of us is Red Lake. They also have their Red Lake Foods Company and their fisheries, which would be a real asset to the communities of Duluth to be able to acquire fresh fish out of Minnesota and all of their wild berries and jams. So there are a number of them.
Yeah.
You know, you could, you know, all over the country, there's a number of different food producers. There's the Tonka company that markets their buffalo products. There's some other ones on the West Coast, the Squamish tribes, with their canned fish that they market also. It'll be quite interesting and enjoyable for the Duluth community to be able to experience a lot of these products. That'll
Tawny,
be
are
new
you
to our
expecting
region.
other Indigenous food producers to be watching closely how you're succeeding in the store and how things are developing for your company?
Yeah, one of the agencies or programs that right away when we were kind of new into our company and developing is an organization called IAC, Intertribal Agricultural Council. And so they represent a lot of unique Indigenous foods that Bruce had mentioned, and also they really assist people with education and how to draw on USDA programs like we did in a successful way and begin to make that a jumping off place for further business. And so, yeah, I see that we're going to, you know, have people maybe possibly look at, you know, growing their own food, starting CSAs, doing things seasonally. And a lot of what I see too is being able to share that with the youth, you know, being able to look at healthy diets, you know, just good, healthy, fun stuff to do with the land.
Is there a cultural significance to the Indigenous food products and just the way that Indigenous people approach food that you want to share with the community too? Is it?
Well, yeah, there's, you know, everything that most of our tribal community peoples, everything that they participate in has a very important significance to our everyday lives. So a lot of the times the food is processed and harvested with great respect.
What are the next steps in terms of getting the market off the ground?
Well, we're going to be doing a lot of conversations with the community, and we'll be doing a lot of planning. We are going to have an advisory council. It's called Wajash Ajay Giwe, so Muskrat Returns, and it's tied back to a traditional story. And we do tie a lot of our work, it has to be culturally based for us, for it to make sense. And so back to your question about the significance of our food, you know, in the last year, AICHO has been really looking at the issue of food sovereignty, and we started with urban gardens. We have a rooftop, and we've been growing, you know, veggies and herbs, and we had some of our traditional medicines there as well. But we have to go deeper than that, and we have to have access to grow our own foods and to know about our foods. And so some families have had the ability to know those traditions, and a lot of the other piece of this is to come back for families who have been away from it. So it has a lot of cultural significance, and it's really going to be huge for our community.
All right. Well, it sounds like a very exciting project. Good luck as
Yeah.
you go forward. LeAnn, Bruce, Tawny, thank you for
thank you.
coming
All the
in and
best.
sharing
Thank you.
information.
Thank you so very much.
Sounds very exciting.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, it's time now for this week's business news from our friends at Business North. Conservation and clean water groups have appealed state permits issued for the Polymet copper nickel mine near Hoyt Lakes. Opponents argue the permits allow Polymet to threaten water for hundreds of years and fail to protect taxpayers from paying cleanup costs. They filed a separate challenge to the state's mining rules, claiming they are too vague to enforce. DNR Secretary Tom Landwehr has previously said that no project in the agency's history has been so thoroughly investigated. Polymet has spent $131 million on environmental review and permitting.
Titanium Partners intends to build a 15-story apartment building in downtown Duluth's historic arts and theater district. The new structure will be one of the city's largest, offering more than 200 living units. Apartments will include 2-bedroom high-end rentals on the corners, 1-bedroom units designed for traveling professionals, and efficiency units with an open floor plan. The building would include a grocery store on the Superior Street level. The $75 million project will be built adjacent to the Sheraton Hotel.
Well, the Wisconsin Public Service Commission has approved a request by Superior Water, Light and Power Company to raise rates. The utility will increase revenue by $1.3 million by raising electric, water, and gas rates. The money will pay for improvements and replace income formerly earned from Husky Energy, which is being refurbished following an explosion and fire earlier this year. Average customers will pay about $4 more per month. For more on these and other stories, visit businessnorth.com.
If you have a comment on our show, call now, dial 218-788-2849 to leave a message, or send an email to almanacnorth@wdse.org. And visit the WDSE website for the latest program updates, broadcast schedules for all 4 of our channels, and news and events here at the station. And Denny, I understand you've been making your way around the region, eating your fill of lutefisk.
Oh, let me see. Cloquet, Cook, Virginia, Duluth. Next week, Hermantown.
Whew. It's a nasty job, but someone has to do it. All right. For Denny and the crew here at Almanac North, I'm Julie Zenner. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next time.